Hey guys, what is up and welcome to a new Tesla update video. So today, as per usual, let's go over Tesla stock. Let's go over the market. Let's talk about what is happening, what we can expect moving forward to end off the week for the last 2 days. Don't forget, we have jobless tomorrow. We have a few other data points as well coming out tomorrow, but yeah, let's talk about it. Tesla up with a nice respectable 3.5% on the day, closing just shy of $322, back to where it was. I mean, it's pretty much been doing a whole lot of nothing for quite some time now, technically speaking, but nonetheless, looking still pretty decent here. And I'll go over my thoughts on what I think can happen next and all that good stuff. If you enjoyed, don't forget to hit that like button. This is not financial advice, and I am not a financial advisor. And of course, if you enjoy my technical analysis, thoughts on the charts, etc., well, I do share my thoughts with the members every single day as the market is trading. So definitely check that out. That link is below for the YouTube membership in the description of the video. $3 a month for the first tier, which is just focused on Tesla. Second tier for $5 also adds NVDA to that. And then of course, $7 includes non-Tesla, non-NVDA stocks. And on the weekend, I do chart requests on Discord from members. But jumping into it, Tesla, like I said, 3.5% at almost 322. So what does this mean? Well, let's go over the 1 hour chart first, right? So 1 hour chart, I mentioned yesterday how we had that push up. I wasn't really confident about it up here, but then we started retracing and I was starting to feel a bit better about that, right? I'm like, okay, now I'm starting to get a little more interested. Now, all things considered, I will admit, it didn't go as low as I thought. I thought it would go a little bit lower because if you draw the Fibonacci's, it actually did stop at a higher Fibonacci, which was right around here, if I bring it, right around the 382, right, roughly. It's kind of where we stopped, which, yeah, I definitely expected it a bit lower. I thought we'll go about to 305. 305 was my main target. Worst case scenario was 295, but 305 was my main target. Didn't really get there, so I'm a little disappointed about that, to be completely honest with you. Missed a nice entry there, but it is what it is, right? 310 is where we ended up stopping instead. We did actually go after hours down closer to that level. We did actually go down to 308, so it was kind of close, I guess, all things considered, but it is what it is. I ended up missing this one, so sometimes it's just how the cookie crumbles. So with that being said, we did end up creating this kind of, bull flaggy type situation, ended up breaking out of it a little more prematurely than I expected, but it is what it is. And then we ended up getting a nice follow through. Now, Tesla, is it still bullish or is it now looking kind of bearish? Well, yeah, it's still bullish, especially after this bull flag breakout. You can see in the 1 hour zooming in, we did a small little, the world's smallest little bull flag, if you will, right here. Nice little bull flaggy situation. And then we broke out once again. And, let's see how it goes into tomorrow with jobless and, a few other data points coming out as well. So the way I'll look at it is this. Actually, going back to the 1 hour one more time, this was the smallest bull flag in the world. That's like kind of irrelevant. But the way I'll be looking at it moving forward is this. There's two main support levels I'll be watching for Tesla stock. The first is about 320, right? About 320. So any pullback to about, 319, 320. That'll be the first major support level, which, if we hold that, which you can see was a major resistance here, support here, some support-ish around this general vicinity here. But below that, if we end up, let's say, cracking 319 to 320, about 315 will be the next level of support, which is around this area, which also, technically speaking, was a resistance here, support here, right? That $5 range, essentially, 315 to 320, is going to be the main level of support that I'll be watching for Tesla stock, potentially as early as tomorrow. If we get any retracement down into that area, I would look at it as a potential pretty, good opportunity for, a trade, fresh bulls, whatever. And that will essentially just print, potentially, what could be another kind of looking bull flaggy type situation right back into those, major support levels I just mentioned, 315, 320. So that's going to be like the more kind of, shorter-ish time frame outlook I have. And the reason this works pretty well is because, we have the 1 hour SMI. You can see a little bit, towards the elevated side. So if we get the small retrace to, let's say, 320 down to as low as 315, but more, hold, of course. I mean, we don't want to crack below that. That's a different story entirely, right? So if you start cracking below pretty much 315, or if you want to give it a bit of wiggle room, 313 again, that's a different story. The narrative will change short term. We most likely will go lower first before heading anywhere higher. So just keep that in mind. That is important to understand, right? Those levels exist for a reason. Breach those levels below, we may have a problem. But as long as the bulls do not breach those levels below and we hold above those levels, yeah, I see, no overall problem here. But like I said, the 1 hour SMI, it's starting to curl and it is in overbought territory, right? And usually when I see these kind of situations, that tells me the fact that, there's a good chance that we may get a little bit of a stalling here, which, small correction, which pretty much lines up with this potential bull flag thesis that the 1 hour SMI kind of reset, into tomorrow, maybe even Friday, depending on how long it takes. But overall, from there, I would expect a move higher. And the levels I'll be looking at for a move higher, something along the lines of this, will be closer to about the mid 320s, about 325, right? This sort of area right here that was a major area of support and resistance several times. But I wouldn't be shocked if we get closer to about 330 itself. And those would be my main two levels to the upside going into earnings, right? As we head into next week, as we have, of course, earnings next week, Thursday, I believe it is. So That's kind of like the shorter-ish time frame that I'm looking at right now and what I can potentially expect to see. Looking at it on the daily is kind of showcasing pretty much roughly the same thing, but this is a slightly more bullish path. But it's also, again, you have to remember it's a daily. It's a little bit more zoomed out, right? We can still get that 1 hour small little retracement, make our way back up to 330, then create a much larger bull flag, and then potentially head higher to 340 post earnings, and then, we'll reassess after that. But this is kind of what I see on the slightly more zoomed out, for the next maybe 2 weeks ish or something like that, right? Into earnings and then post earnings as well for about a week. Assuming things go well, naturally, earnings is a major high risk type situation. It's very unpredictable. I'm not going to try to predict earnings, but something like this can potentially happen, or I can see it play out. And this is actually kind of similar to what we did here, right? Kind of a similar situation that we set up all the way back here. We ended up kind of being pretty bearish down here. Potentially the EMAs were looking not very good, and then we had a beautiful push up, kind of like what we're doing right now, potentially even as high as 330, right? Like I mentioned. And then we had a nice little massive bull flag back into the exponential moving averages, and then we headed higher. Now, I think this is a much bigger move. I'm not necessarily expecting a move this large, but the structure and the idea behind it is similar to what I expect within this massive pennant. Because again, don't forget, the very big picture is we're still within this massive pennant. Until this pennant breaks above or below, don't expect anything too crazy on Tesla just yet. For better or for worse, for the bulls or the bears, right? We need to get actually out of this pennant to really see like an actual move somewhere meaningfully higher or lower, right? Again, above this, at the very least, we'll retest 360s or 370 high, in my opinion, if we break out of this pennant to the north side. But at that point, seeing closer to 400, low 400s wouldn't shock me. Flip side, 270 followed by to 240 roughly if we break to the downside of the pennant. But again, we'll talk about that when the time comes. We still have a lot of room. Don't forget, we're still kind of like almost in the middle of this pennant. Like there's still, technically speaking, you never know, right? Until we get a breakout, you just don't know when it'll break out. So naturally speaking, you can expect potentially, several even more weeks containment within this pennant as we get very, very tight. So let's not forget that. That is a possibility still, and a pretty realistic one. But going back to the daily kind of situation here, like I said, if we get that small little 1 hour retracement, maybe as just tomorrow, maybe also Friday, nice little small retracement back into the support region here, 315, 320, push up, 330, get a rejection, start making this potential bull flag into earnings, which again is next week. It's Wednesday actually. And then we get a potential bull flag type scenario into earnings, into the exponential moving averages as they start catching up. That'll look something like this, and we get it into the exponential moving averages again, kind of like what we did here. Nice push up above them, back bull flag into them, head higher, same idea, and then we end up pushing higher off of that bull flag into about this sort of mid to high 330s region. So that'll be kind of what I'll be looking at right now moving forward, and that's kind of my overall perspective. I don't think there's too much more to say other than that. I mean, we have, of course, like I said, the 4 hour. This is the other thing I'm looking at right now. We have the 4 hour SMI. Still, there is still room higher. It is still pointing up. It's not looking too bad at all just yet. But you can see every time the SMI has gotten anywhere around the vicinity of these upper ranges, we've gotten pretty close, if not pretty much there at, tops, if you will, right? Even up here, you can see once it started getting that crossover, right? Top over here, we ended up kind of, doing nothing for like just over a week, really. And then we had a bearish divergence, and then now we're back here once again. So, there's still more room to the upside, which is why I wouldn't be surprised, 325, maybe even 330 still before this really starts topping out. Then that bull flag will reset the 4 hour SMI, at least to some level, into a potential continuation higher, which then, we could start potentially creating what could be a bearish divergence, get a rejection, and then continue chopping within that overall pennant shape, if you will. I want to redraw the pennant here as well in the 4 hour so I have it. I can't remember if I had it like this, or I think it was like this actually. I think I had something like this. Oh my God, I can't even click on these damn little trend lines. The buttons are so small, I have to get like a microscope to see them. There we go, something like that, give or take, of course, right? Anyways, hopefully that makes sense, more or less. But that's kind of the overall picture that I potentially, I'm gonna have to, because I don't want to delete all those circles I just drew manually, so I'm pressing Control Z. Now it's gonna delete that trend line I just put. Whatever, we have that on the daily. It's all that matters. But yeah, this is kind of the overall, objective, perspective, whatever, structure, movement, whatever you want to call it, that I'm looking at right now. But again, don't forget, this all hinges on pretty much around 315 holding, right? That's the most important thing. 315, 313, if you want to give it more wiggle room, starts failing, then this whole situation completely null and void. Don't ignore it entirely. Never happened. Never talked about it, and we most likely make our way back down to the bottom of this pennant. Get a retest of that once again, maybe even into earnings, closer to 300 itself, maybe 305, And then we ended up potentially going higher, assuming we, of course, hold this trend line, of course, right? It's pretty simple stuff, in my opinion. But hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully it's not too complicated, but that's kind of what I foresee as of right now. But, again, I do give the bulls the upper hand here. It's hard not to be completely honest with you. We had the bearish engulfing yesterday, but again, you have to remember bearish engulfing candles or any bearish or bullish candles, they're not actually bullish or bearish until validated. So in other words, because we never went below this low and especially didn't close below the low of yesterday, the bearish engulfing never really took truly into effect, right? You have to go below or especially close below it to activate it, if that makes sense. By itself, it's meaningless until activated, but once activated, it's pretty powerful. Anyways, hopefully that all makes sense. Options flow very quickly. Nice little bit of a call flow actually towards the end of the day. Maybe, maybe someone's expecting a bit of a spike in the morning tomorrow off of jobless. You never know for sure. Let's see how it goes. But all in all, you get the idea, you get the picture I'm personally looking at right now. So let's see how it goes into tomorrow. Let's see what the market has in store for us. And yeah, hope you enjoyed. Thanks for watching. See you tomorrow. Peace.